The headlines about Mossad rejecting a plan to assassinate Hamas officials in Qatar were big enough, but then came another shocker. Russia joins Iran. Mossad headquarters bombed in Israel. Suddenly, it's not just about one agency weighing its options. It's about two major powers stepping into the fight, directly targeting Israel's intelligence nerve center. It's the kind of chain reaction that makes you realize this is more than just another round of fighting. It's shaping into something that could pull in much bigger players. So let's start with what was happening between Israel and Qatar. Israel had launched airstrikes on Qatar, saying they were targeting senior Hamas leaders. Mossad, which is normally right at the center of these operations, was noticeably absent from the official government statements. That's because, according to Israelis familiar with the matter, Mossad had rejected an earlier plan to use ground agents to go after Hamas officials in Qatar. David Barnea, the head of Mossad, didn't want to greenlight such an operation. His reasoning was that it could damage the relationship he and the agency had been carefully building with the Qataris. And that relationship matters because Qatar not only hosts Hamas, but also plays the role of mediator in ceasefire talks. Even though the airstrike was carried out, the Palestinian group later said it failed to kill the top leaders, including Khalil al-Hayya, the acting head. But the attack did claim the lives of several of his relatives and aides, and even a Qatari officer. That immediately brought a harsh response from Doha. Qatar condemned the strike as nothing less than state terrorism and accused Israel of betraying the mediation process. It's not hard to see why. They felt blindsided while trying to play a diplomatic role. Inside Israel, though, the decision wasn't unanimous either. Analysts had been saying that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu may have simply lost patience with the slow-moving ceasefire talks. His push for the strike had the backing of Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer and Defense Minister Israel Katz. But the Chief of Israel's Defense Forces, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, opposed the timing. And Nitzan Alon, the senior officer handling hostage negotiations, wasn't even invited to a key planning meeting, apparently so he couldn't voice his opposition. That tells you a lot about how divided leadership was behind the scenes. The Mossad's hesitation influenced how the strike played out. As one Israeli source put it, Hamas leaders could have been targeted years from now, since Mossad had the tools to eventually get them. The real question was, why do it right at this moment? The airstrike ended up happening not because it was the only chance, but because Netanyahu wanted action now. The Prime Minister defended the strike, framing it as Israel's own 9/11 moment. He compared Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel to the September 11 attacks carried out by al-Qaeda in the United States. Netanyahu basically said that countries like Qatar, which provide shelters to groups like Hamas, have a choice: either expel them or bring them to justice. If they don't, then Israel will take matters into its own hands. From his perspective, Israel had been handed a rare opportunity when Hamas leaders gathered in one place, and not acting on it would have looked like weakness. That's where it gets even more complicated, because at the same time, another massive story was unfolding. The Washington Post, citing officials, reported that Mossad's headquarters itself had been bombed in a coordinated strike. This wasn't just some small skirmish. It was a direct hit on the heart of Israel's intelligence network. Analysts immediately began saying fingerprints of both Iran and Russia were all over it. The symbolism alone was staggering. For decades, Mossad had had the reputation of being untouchable, able to reach into any corner of the globe and pull off missions no one else could. And yet, here it was, on the receiving end of an attack that shattered that image. The shock didn't just stay in Israel. Washington, Moscow, Tehran, and every major capital with a stake in security and intelligence were left asking the same thing: how did this happen, and what comes next? On the outside, Israel has always been viewed as almost invincible, with advanced defenses like Iron Dome and Arrow backed by the full weight of the United States. But the strike showed that image was just that, an image. Russia's involvement had shifted the battlefield almost overnight. Surveillance planes from Syrian airspace, naval ships near the Mediterranean, and electronic warfare units all played a role in tilting the balance toward Iran. Suddenly, Israel wasn't the lone power broker in the region. It was staring down a coalition that could match and even overwhelm its capabilities. Inside the country, the reality was even more painful. For Mossad to be hit meant either there were massive intelligence failures or someone on the inside had betrayed secrets. Either way, it meant Israel's strongest weapon, its shield of secrecy, had been cracked wide open. That realization is deeply unsettling because it suggests enemies are now operating not just outside Israel's walls, but inside them too. Looking at the performance of the key players, it's clear why analysts are rattled. Russia managed to project power in the Middle East at a level that even the Soviet Union never quite reached during the Cold War. By using Syria as a launch pad, deploying advanced radar systems like the S-400 and S-500, and syncing with Iranian intelligence, Moscow showed it could blind Israel's defenses long enough for precision strikes to hit. That was a blunt message to Washington. Russia can open new fronts whenever it wants. Iran, too, showed something new. For years, it was written off as a regional power held back by sanctions, but coordinating and pulling off a strike right on Mossad's doorstep sent a very different signal. The attack demonstrated access to high-level intelligence, mastery of drones and missiles, and possibly even advanced hypersonic tech. That's not just embarrassing for Israel, it's a warning for the West as a whole. Israel, by contrast, had a performance that fell flat. Its defenses didn't stop the attack, its intelligence didn't predict it, and its own people were left shaken. Iron Dome, long marketed as nearly impenetrable, either malfunctioned, got overwhelmed by the volume of fire, or was blinded by Russian electronic warfare. David's sling and arrow, built to counter bigger threats, also didn't respond in time. For a nation that prides itself on never being vulnerable again, this was a huge blow. Meanwhile, Russia and Iran protected themselves with layers of plausible deniability. Moscow kept saying it was just observing, while clearly providing electronic support. Tehran used proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas, and militias in Syria and Iraq as buffers, so the strikes couldn't easily be traced back to them directly. That gave them room to maneuver without taking immediate retaliation. The uniqueness of this strike is that it wasn't just missiles flying. It was a full-on demonstration of partnership between a global power and a regional power against one of America's closest allies. That kind of symbolism is hard to ignore. Mossad, the ultimate symbol of Israeli intelligence dominance, was brought down a peg on its own turf. The message to Israel was simple: you're not invincible. The message to the United States was even more direct: your guarantees and alliances can be broken. The price tags for these actions are heavy. Israel lost lives, infrastructure, and prestige. Its citizens are now dealing with a level of vulnerability they haven't felt since the early days of the state. Its economy is shaking as investors grow wary of instability. Militarily, it will have to shift resources to defense, stretching its forces thin. Russia, of course, risks more Western sanctions and growing hostility from NATO, but the Kremlin seems ready to pay that price if it means throwing the West into disarray. Iran might face retaliation from Israel, but for Tehran, the prestige boost and humiliation of its rival make the risks worth it. And for the rest of the world, the risk is that the Middle East once again becomes the power keg that sets off something much bigger. As NDTV noted, this isn't just about one strike or one failed operation. It's a historical marker that could reshape global politics. The idea that Israeli intelligence fortresses can be breached, that air defenses can fail, and that alliances can shift overnight is chilling. No nation is truly safe, and no superpower can guarantee the outcomes it once thought it controlled. Netanyahu is almost certain to retaliate, maybe with cyber attacks against Moscow, maybe with airstrikes into Iran, or maybe by targeting key figures thought to be behind the attack. the United States will have to respond too, either with more military presence or tougher sanctions, and both come with risks of escalation. Russia, emboldened, could open up new fronts, not just in the Middle East, but in Europe or Asia as well. So the conclusion is clear. We are not looking at isolated incidents anymore. We are watching the opening act of a much larger confrontation, one that could redraw maps, shift alliances, and change the global order in ways we are only beginning to grasp. Well, that's it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe because we'll be covering more updates on this soon.